Good evening. I'm Matthew Rothstein, Deputy County Administrative Officer. Welcome to the Kelseyville Community Visioning Forum. We are grateful that you chose to spend your evening with us. Among many alternatives, there's a big football game going on right now, I understand. Thank you, community members, and a couple of county staff for choosing to be here instead. How and where we invest our focus and our time informs the development of our priorities. Our priorities, in turn, drive many kinds of decisions. In most financial decisions, the choice to spend money in one area precludes spending in others. A dollar spent is an unavailable dollar. In an environment where money is scarce, financial decisions are particularly critical and have broad implications. The Board of Supervisors, County Administrative Office, department heads, and county fiscal staff are responsible for the quality of many financial decisions in our county government. But we cannot make these decisions sitting alone in an office. We serve in a representative government, a government of, by, and for the people. That means we cannot do our jobs well unless we hear from you. You inform our priorities, both directly and through your elected representatives. To make grounded financial decisions, we must understand what matters to you. We also cannot afford to do everything that we would like. And not every community need aligns with the county government function or service. We want to do the right work, the most timely and important work. And that's why we are here tonight. And now it's my great privilege to introduce to you District 5 Supervisor Rob Brown.
Thank you, Matthew. So I'm not going to go back over what he's discussed, although that is the real crux of this meeting tonight. Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. I know some of you were caught a little bit off guard by thinking, okay, the meeting's at the church, Rob Brown's going to be there, there's got to be some weird thing going on. But I really appreciate the fact that Pastor Steve let us have it here. It works really well for us, and I really appreciate it a lot. And I can't tell you how surprised and appreciative I am of this crowd to show up here. They asked me how many seats to put out, and I said, I don't know, 15 or 20. There's a game, it's raining and all that, but I'm really pleasantly surprised. And I hope, something comes out of it. There's not going to be a lot of promises made here, but we're going to hear you. We're going to hear what you have to say, and hopefully, come to some resolution as to what the priorities are. But before we begin, I'd ask that we stand for the, if you're able
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So before I talk to our CA, General Hutchinson, I'd like to say, we're going to talk about a lot of things that we're stating in the office. You folks, I know so many of you, and I know that you're aware, you're educated, you know what's going on with the county, you know certainly what's going on in the last 2 years with the wildfires and the devastating impact that it not only had for those that lost their homes and other things in the fires, but to the county government as well. And the resources that were limited to begin with, even before the fire, there were problems, and with roads and just general services that we all expect as taxpayers. But after the fires, it really hit us really hard and left us with some real big holes that we need to try to figure out what exactly we're going to do, and we need to hear from you. So that's what the purpose of this series of meetings are. I know there's many of you here that don't necessarily live in District 5, but what happens in District 5 impacts you. I appreciate that. But we're going to have this series of meetings throughout the county, and we'll hear from you now, and we'll hear from you then, and we'll get through this, hopefully come up with some ideas and some thoughtful perspective on exactly where we're going to go from here. So with that, I'd like to introduce Carol Hutchinson.
Well, it used to be the third row, but now there's like 10 rows.
Alright, well, thanks Supervisor Brown. I don't know why I'm calling you Supervisor Brown, I usually call you Rob. We can't hear.
Can't hear you.
Talk, yeah. Alright, back to Gil's. Alright, I said thanks to Supervisor Brown, who also, I know very well as Rob. Introduction. Good evening, everybody. Absolutely thrilled to see you all here. We were concerned that the rain might be a deterrent. Obviously, it's not, so it's just great to have such a great turnout tonight. Over the past 3 years, as we have mentioned, Lake County residents have shown the world some truly powerful examples of unity as we face a series of disasters, the scope of which has not been experienced by the other communities near us that have also had singular disasters. The term Lake County Strong is much more than just a slogan. It really has become a way of life for us here in Lake County. Now we need to channel that same can-do spirit that we have to address Lake County's serious and in fact worsening financial condition. The recent fires that devastated so many of our local communities have also created dire financial circumstances, consequences for the county finance. The loss of 1,800 county homes and many other local businesses has significantly reduced our property tax revenues and sales tax revenues. It translates to a cumulative loss over the last 3 summers of about $5 million to the county general fund, with an additional estimated $1.5 million each subsequent year while we are in recovery mode. The general fund, which I just mentioned, by the way, is the source from which the majority of our essential core services are funded. And in just a few minutes, I'll elaborate a bit more on what we mean by core services. During this time of financial challenge, the cost of county services, of course, continues to go up, as everything does in our world, while the financial resources to cover them are significantly diminished. We're now reaching a point where something has got to give. For many, many years, Lake County has been known to manage its public resources in a fiscally sound manner. We've kept our taxes low, maintained oversight strictly on county spending. We've balanced our budgets honestly and without unwise financial gimmicks that you hear used in some other jurisdictions. You may hear from time to time about a county filing bankruptcy. Well, that is not us. That has not been us. You hear about counties that have massive debts. Lake County has You hear of retirees from other counties earning pensions equal to or more than what they earned before they retired. Definitely not happening here. So the purpose of tonight's Community Visioning Forum is first to educate you about your county government's serious financial picture. Second, to engage you in helping us begin to prioritize our community service needs. And third, to seek your input in developing additional revenue sources so we can provide quality county services that you deserve. Members of the Board of Supervisors have come up with some very powerful goals. They have the wall over there. These are not only for the current fiscal year, but for the future of Lake County in general. The hope will be to also refine and develop these goals as a roadmap for the future of Lake County, using the input we receive over the course of these meetings. We have a number of county department heads here with us tonight. They can answer specific questions that you may have about the services their departments provide. I'm going to start next to Supervisor Brown is our esteemed sheriff, Brian Martin, Sheriff and OES Director. Thanks, Brian, for being here. Next to him is Lars Ewing, our Public Services Director. He's over Parks and Recreation and a lot of other stuff. Our librarian, Christopher Reach, is to Lars's right. Bill Davidson, our Animal Care and Control Director, is also here. And over here on this side is Scott DeLeon, our Public Works Director, AKA the Road Scott. We also have county administrative staff present here in addition to myself. On the end of the table, Jeff Ryan and Stephen Carter can respond to finance questions. And Michelle Scully on the far end over there is also a member of our staff, and she's going to moderate the question and answer panel. And of course, Annette and Rothstein. So I want to begin a very brief PowerPoint to illustrate how your money is spent. The first two slides that I'm going to introduce show you that the great majority of your local tax dollars, in this case I'm referring to property tax, sales tax, and gas tax, the great majority of those are dedicated to the essential public services, aka core services. Of course, the county provides lots of other services as well, some of which are funded by those same local tax dollars. The assessor recorder, the tax collector, the auditor controller, for instance. And we have other services, other county services that are self-funded. They're paid by fees and special funding sources that they get from the state and federal governments that are specific to the services that they provide. Examples of those departments are water resources, health services, social services, air quality, building and safety. But today we're focused primarily on the essential core services. Senior citizens programs, veteran services, animal control, parks and recreation, museums, libraries, and roads. For the most part, our focus is on the discussion pertaining to these departments and the services they provide. But again, this list does not include all of the county departments that are funded with local tax dollars. These other non-core departments generally provide internal support to the core departments. So they provide the services they need in order to operate. Those non-core services also get substantially less of those local tax dollars than the core departments do, as you'll see on this next slide. So this next slide, and I apologize for it being small for you if you're in the back room. Basically what this shows is that 51% of your local tax dollars go to the law enforcement services that come under this group of core services. 9% go to the other core service departments, parks, ag, UC, museums, senior citizens programs, animal control, veterans, library. 17% go to roads, and that leaves 23% remaining for the non-core services, the supportive departments. So again, all total, we have 77% of our local tax dollars going to these core services. This next slide is a graph that illustrates how over the past 6 years, funding for the core services has gone up and is still climbing. So here, this blue line is the funding committed, general fund funding committed to core services. Since 2011-12, it has increased 27%. Meanwhile, the other non-core services, those departments that support the core, have declined almost 8%, 7.65% decrease. Despite the growth that you see in the core services, I'm absolutely confident that my counterparts from those core services departments would still say that that there is an incredible need in their department. They are still lacking the staffing and resources to meet all of the needs in our community. And for the non-core services, the financial picture is even worse. As illustrated in this fourth slide, we're showing you what's going on with property tax. And this slide is intended to illustrate that our property tax revenues have depleted due to inflation, adjusting for inflation. Even with the increasing challenges in the years, there's been no real growth in property tax revenues since the Great Recession. When you compare us to Bay Area counties, even surrounding counties, those counties have come around after the recession. Lake County is still struggling, and overall, our property tax revenues continue to decline when adjusted on an inflation basis. So as you can see here, we're about $5 million down in 16-17 from where we were in 08-09. 08-09 was the year the recession hit. And this red line that's hard to see illustrates the continued downward spiral. So again, that is property tax. And to date, the accumulated property tax loss totals about $3.5 million. And as I mentioned before, the anticipated ongoing loss is estimated at about an additional $1.5 million per year. And again, cost of business continues to increase. So property tax funds about 50% of the general fund, and the failure of it to recover and the effect of the disaster certainly has already resulted in staffing reductions. If you look over here on my right to this red chart, this is an illustration of the staffing levels in these core service departments. And as you can see, since 08-09, we have already lost 40 positions in those departments, which represents about 11% of the staff. So then we have disaster response and recovery. We have had, when we talk about how Lake County has had unprecedented disaster impact far beyond what the other counties have had, it's because we've had 5 disasters in 36 months. Unbelievable. And what this slide illustrates is that to date, we are estimating the cost of all these disasters to be a little over $26 million. We don't have the figures on the Sulphur fire yet. Those are still being worked up. But the cost of disaster is unmanageable. Some of these costs are going to be reimbursed. We're working with Callaway and FEMA on reimbursements, but will never be made whole. At this point, our best estimate, barring any further disasters, is that the county will bear as much as $5 million of these disaster costs. So that gets us to the last slide, which is the slide that illustrates the gap between revenue and expenses. And this slide, I hope, will help put our financial challenge into perspective for you. It illustrates how the cost of core services is exceeding the new revenues needed to support them. If you look back at fiscal year 10-11, which is right here, during that year, revenue actually exceeded expenses to the tune of $3 million approximately. Those funds were set aside, and then things began to flip, and we entered a period of years where expenses exceeded revenue, and those funds were used to plug the gap. However, when you hit 15-16, you can see that that surplus has been exhausted and more. And as we move into 16-17, the trajectory just gets bigger. So again, the situation that has occurred in 16-17, and we're halfway now through 17-18, it is a gap that is unsustainable. So that is our budget reality, and we are now at a point where we are ready to open up the discussion and hear from you.
Can I ask you a question? Did all the properties lost in the fire disaster?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You already mentioned
The question.
The question was,
Use
did
the
the,
microphone, because we should get all these on mic, so people in the back.
why don't we just start with our
Because I
question?
think it's a good question, that somebody else may have in the back as well, so.
So you're going to kick us off. So there are so many people here tonight. We have about an hour and 10 minutes for conversation. So what I'd like to do is if you'd like to ask a question, Supervisor Brown has stated that these forms will be going to each district, that he'd like to respect District 5 community members to be able to speak first. So if you're in a different district, maybe once we kind of get through the queue, we can take your questions. And so if you would like to give your name, that would be awesome. And why don't you're going to start, sir, so you're going to tell us, just hang on a sec, what your name is. And if you're able to come up here, I think that would be great, so I don't have to wind through all of you with the cord and wrap it around anyone's neck. If you're not able to come to the microphone, I can essentially go back as far as Aaron. Wave your hand, Aaron. So hopefully you are able to come up, and if not, we'll just work it out and hopefully talk really loudly in the back when you can't walk up. And also, please, everyone has mentioned that it's a rainy night, so we really appreciate you being here tonight, and know that not everyone who may have wanted to attend was able to. So if you have a friend or a family member that wasn't able to, please share this with them. I see Lake Canoes in the back there. We're also videotaping this. You can bring a friend or a relative a survey, and we also have an email that's set up, which is vision@lakecountyca.gov. I'll give you a minute to write that down if you want to. Awesome, and it will be up there on the screen. So you're also free to send an email through that means. Don't know if I've forgotten, did I forget anything? Yeah. Okay, so I look forward to this discussion, and sir, why don't you come on up and tell us your name and kick us off.
Thank you. I was only going to ask a real quick question, but now that I have this mic. No, my quick question was, you mentioned how property tax funds so much in the county, and how it was kind of cratering because our property hasn't gone up very much. And you talked about inflation hitting it. And I was wondering, I assume all these thousands of homes we lost in these fires affected that property tax also. And if that was true, shouldn't that show up on the county's cost of these disasters? Because other people don't pay that cost. And it seems to me that's really a cost of the disaster to lose the property. Anyway, I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
But it's a general one. I, along with everybody else, was asked to fill out this rank these core services. You know, it's not, as much as these disasters and everything are the top priority, the county has to somehow invest in something that will improve the economy so we can pull out of this someday.
I know.
And to me, that thing is the lake. You know, we have to maintain the lake, market the lake, and I'm actually rank these, and I could probably make a pretty good guess, but I have no idea where the lake's covered in any of this, and you didn't even mention it, so.
Well, actually, there is a Board of Supervisors goal that pertains to the lake.
Okay.
They do have one. And the thing I'll say about the lake is, this past year, the governor signed into law something called AB 707. It was authored by our own Cecilia Aguiar Curry, our assembly member, property tax backfill to compensate for that cost. They have not done so in the subsequent years, but we're continuing to ask that they do. The other point I should make is about recovery and rebuilding. Now that we're 2.5 years out from the Valley Fire being by far the largest of the disasters, a little more than 10% of the rebuilding effort has been complete. So recovery is a long, slow process.
That was a great question. Thank you. Thanks for kicking us off too. All right, I'm gonna go with this hand. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
My name is Rosemary Donchi, and my question is, we haven't had a tax lien sale for several years until this past year, where we had one, I believe, in January. And since the tax dollars are so much a part of our economy, do we have plans for another tax lien sale? Are we working on that?
Thank you.
So, and I know you read our agenda, so you probably already know this, but tomorrow it's on the agenda. Rhonda's actually coming to give us an update on what our plans are for the next sale.
Oh, okay.
So I'll know when you know tomorrow.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. Great question, sir. Yeah, you. I went like this, bing, bing, bing.
Yeah, my name's Larry Anderson, and I live in Riviera. The family's been up here for about 20 years. No relationship to Don Anderson, although Don Anderson was my sister's attorney, involved in a fraudulent foreclosure of our family home. And one of the issues here is property taxes and property values. And I've been on a campaign for years and finally gave up to bring to the attention of the county that there's massive foreclosure fraud in this county. And in my own case, I discovered fraudulent assignment documents signed by a Bank of America employee saying that she belonged to another organization that she did not. In any case, I've discovered 6 other people who had similar problems, and one of the fraudulent assigners was a person named Linda Green, whose boss from Doc X is now serving time in Club Fed.
Larry?
Okay, for fraud.
This is about
Okay, I'll get to
It's
the
not
point.
County budget?
It's nothing to do with county.
It has to do with the county. Yes, it does, because the fraudulent foreclosures are causing decrease in property values, and other counties in other states have gone after the banks, and one of them was in Massachusetts, Montgomery County, Massachusetts.
Not in California because we can't.
Yes, you can. Anyway, I brought this to Don Anderson with absolute proof of fraud, and he knows it, and he just said the county, he did not have enough resources to fight white-collar crime. And I think that issue should be looked at again. California, the state, just a moment, please. The state of California recovered $17 billion from the banksters for fraud. But none of it came to the counties, none of it came to the homeowners. It went into the general fund. Thank you.
Well, I will give you my name when I'm finished, if I may. I'm sort of disappointed that we always start and end with speaking and talking about what money means in our lives. Because if I can start with a little joke, it's the question goes, why can governmental employees go on strike? And the answer is because nobody would notice. And that's basically what we have to keep in mind, because we have beautiful graphs here, but it's always taken from more of a need. We have to come up with some creativity and some open relationship between the bureaucracy and the citizenship. This is the attempt to achieve that, and I congratulate them. I came with different question actually, but this is something what, if we don't sit here and try to figure out if the manna would come down from the sky, then we are not going to get anywhere. Because as far as I know, the county has this is just an example, I'm not an expert on it, but there is a $250 million annual budget. So that will come to about $34,000 per person, including newly born babes. And $34,000, I think, goes a long way. I never put that together myself. And the core issues, the core departments may not be as core as they actually could be, because we don't know where it all goes. Somebody says there are 45% of all jobs in Lake County are government related. But that probably isn't going to work. I don't see why 45% of all employed people have to work to maintain the government. I don't understand that. It's okay, I feel it's another person to the turn.
Who else has a question? All right, would you like to come up? There you go. Thank you.
I don't think I need a microphone.
I appreciate a person who can
My question is for Christopher Beach. I want to know about our library. It's very important to me. Our literacy in Lake County is very poor. And I was with literacy for many, many years, and it's really an important program for Lake County, and I'd like to know what the status is.
Thank you. So yeah, Christopher Beach, I'm the county librarian, and I oversee our 4 county library branches. And as she alluded to, I also oversee our adult literacy program. Our adult literacy program is a very small program. It costs under $100,000, but it has big impacts on the community. We train volunteer tutors who help people who need to learn how to read or need others literacy skill training. And we help them get a leg up and get back into society and get a job or whatever they need to do with their literacy skills. So I thank you for that question, and it is something that's challenging to keep funding when we have such small margins with the budget. We only have 1 permanent part-time staff member in charge of the adult literacy program, and then a few other part-time staff members, and we're leveraging volunteers to help that work. But every year we have to scrounge for new materials, scrounge for staff training, scrounge for the training for the volunteers. And so that's something that, if the trend continues of the budget, we might not be able to continue giving to the county.
That was a great question. Thank you so much. Thanks, Christopher. Who else? All right, you want to come on up? I didn't see your hand, but it's okay. Come on up. Give me that.
I'm just curious, the slide before that, they got that 1 year that the revenue had increased.
Yeah.
What was that from? I mean, have you guys looked at that?
Yeah, that was,
Yeah, the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wish every year was like that. Well, that was from a tax sale. And also, it was before the real impact of the recession started to get home. But the tax sale that year.
So the increase in the home value?
Well, no, sale of lien properties. What Rob referred to earlier. Delinquent properties, yeah. We're defaulted on their property tax or sold at auction.
I just had a comment that, in general, I know the core services are really important. It seems to be sometimes if we spend a little more of the budget or focus on the non-core, it brings up the quality of living and makes Lake County far more appealing, and that will help the tax revenue.
I appreciate that. That was a great question. All right. I didn't forget you back there. Okay. Thank you. Give your name?
Yeah, my name is Douglas Clark. I'm a retired lineman for Pacific Gas and Electric. And I volunteered over 1,500 hours with code enforcement, building, and also a great group of task force. And I appreciate that opportunity. It's a good time. I do have a concern, and I know a lot of the community has a concern about this, is the vineyards and the amount of vineyards that are going in and the water that is allotted to the vineyards, and how much of the natural habitat is being removed. Any idea how many acres were there last year on vineyards? And also soil contamination catch basins for vineyards.
Use a microphone, please, so we can hear you.
Soil contamination from the vineyards, catch basins that aren't applied for a lot of the vineyards because, potassium, all kinds of things are used in this. So it's kind of a concern, and I know that I've been talking to quite a bit of people in the community on what this is applying. So any remarks on that?
Commissioner, right there. I was late. Okay, what's the first question again?
How many acres of vineyards have been added last year?
And introduce yourself, please.
Okay, my name is Steve Patrick, I'm Lake County Head Commissioner Sealer. Last year, they added in 16, but not 17. But in 16, they added 60 acres. According to the state rate, according to the state numerator.
60 acres?
Yes. However, I have 17.
And any idea what's happening?
Some are, okay, by the way, some are being weathered over or, to other things, so they're not active yet.
So they haven't been built.
I'm not sure about that, but I know that I know that all vineyards use a drip irrigation, which means the runoff is very, very low. They don't add nitrogen, as far as I know, to the vineyards because there's no need. They don't add a lot of that to the vineyards.
Budget, please.
The Farm Bureau has a irrigated lands waiver program that monitors it. We have not been in non-compliance for several years now.
Do you guys test water, like groundwater and streams and
Let's
creeks?
go back to the budget.
Budget.
Now you know, Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau.
That's a really good question, and here's another thing that I want to throw out there. I'm going to bring in something to the board in the next month to discuss our area plan updates. And this is where we need to deal with the area plan, what zoning is going to be, what you want. And so we're going to be doing a whole series of these same kind of meetings through that area plan update process. Now's a good time to do it because we've had the fires, we've had all these things. And so we'll try to update these, and some of them we'll just dust them off because they've been done more recent. But we are going to be doing that, so we're going to be covering those things. But there's a lot of perception out there involving vineyards, and we need to address that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. To Supervisor Brown's point, if we can focus questions, if you have a question on the presentation tonight and on the budget, and as he just said, there's so many bigger questions to be asked that our hope is that this isn't the first and only a one-off kind of a conversation. So thank you for your passion about Lake County. All right, I saw, yes.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I do have some budget questions. A couple of things is where all government agencies are being hit with deficit spending right now, but I wanted to find out what you're doing with your unions. First, costs are continuing to increase along with base costs, and also the reserve, how long your reserve is going to be lasting for you before it's completely depleted. And if that's the case, are you looking at furlough days? How many furlough days? How many departments? We've gone through that before, so those are kind of my questions.
Good questions. We are currently in negotiations with our labor groups, so I'm not able to elaborate on the conversations that are being had there. We have no plans underway for furloughs or anything of the nature, but I can certainly tell you that that sort of thing or layoffs is certainly not out of the realm of possibility for the future. And I'm going to rely on Jeff Ryan to answer the question.
Our reserves are now, probably, I've been here 27 years. Our reserves are at the lowest point that I can ever recall. And we're not going to let it go any lower. So it's going to necessitate some tough choices or some revenue enhancements from here on out.
Do you have like a 10% reserve, a 3% reserve, and what is that compared to a month of operating expenditure? I don't expect you to have that right off the top of your head, but I mean.
Everybody wants to know. So we got a general idea, I think we do, but here's the one thing that I want to throw out there. A lot of the money in reserves, and correct me if I'm wrong, is some of that money that's in reserve is actually held for projects. Is that correct? Or is that different?
No, that is true, but even that is
Not all of it can be used for something.
Designated.
Right, some of that is. Okay.
I'm talking about unallocated reserves.
general reserves. Yeah, we've got $7 million, which is 2 months.
Okay, so $7 million, about 2 months, if we're using it. And here's the problem. First, I want to go back to one thing, unless you have to follow up.
No, it's fine.
So, I go back to Milo's humor here about no one would notice. You would notice. There's no 45% county employees. Maybe there's 45% in the county. I doubt that, but if there is, it's fire department, it's schools, it's city government, it's Caltrans, it's all these, it's state government. It's not just the county. But I can tell you that I first took this job out of an inherent distrust of government. And when I got in there, it didn't take me very long to realize how committed most of our county employees are and how little they get paid. We're in negotiations all the time. They never do raises like others do. And there's gonna be a lot of positions lost. And hopefully, if we do that, it'll be positions that are vacant, because we don't want to see more people on the unemployment line. We're doing everything we can to try to hold on to folks' jobs. But I gotta tell you, there's never been a time in my life where I've been more proud of a group of people than the county employees that you would have noticed had you been one of the people that were up at the fire and lost their home, and that were working around the clock 70 days a week, and they continue to do that. And many of them are salary employees, they don't get paid at all. So I kind of resent the notion that nobody would notice if the county employees went on strike, which they haven't, because they are so committed. So, your question, I really appreciate the question. It just came up because it gets to the heart of it. We don't offer a service. We don't build houses. We don't make, bake bread. We don't offer that. We have services. We're in the people business. So when we talk about offering services, it comes with people. And that's what we're trying to do, is protect the services that you want, that you need. That's why we're here, to offer these opportunities for priorities, so that we have the right people in the right place. Law enforcement. I mean, there's not a group up here that can't justify more money for their people. And every one of them have tried. We're trying to do everything we can. But it's not us against you. We're trying to figure out what your priorities are, so we can determine exactly what positions we need to fill and where we're going to come up with the money. Reserves may be good, but like Jeff said, for 2 months, that'd be really irresponsible for us to say we're going to give you a raise, but we can only afford it for 2 months. So anyway, that's just one of the things that I'd like to add. So.
Thank you, Supervisor Brown. Your name, because I already know it. Hi, I'm Carla Ritz. I'm the First 5 Director for Lake County. I'm also a resident of Kelseyville and a parent. And I came because it was an open invitation to share our priorities. So I wanted to share with you what my priorities are. And my question is going to be sort of, how does that fall? You're asking us to sort of check the box. And I'm curious how my priority is distributed. I have an idea, but I'd like to maybe hear things I don't know. The well-being of children in our county today is my priority. It has a very real impact on the future of our county. Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, which include abuse,
of all kinds, neglect, substance abuse in the home, domestic violence, mental illness of family members, or the loss of a parent due to abandonment or death lead to predictable patterns of brain development, traits, and behaviors which have been proven to result in slow development of reading and language skills, diminished IQ, poor decision-making, memory problems, attention disorders, aggressive behavior, social isolation, poor understanding of social cues, and increased conflict in the school years. These challenges then significantly elevate the risk of alcohol, tobacco, and drug use in the preteen and teen years. These compounding problems then frequently result in school failure, dropping out, suspensions, expulsions, delinquency, and entering the prison pipeline. The adults that emerge after the after effects of childhood adversity are at a higher risk for unemployment, for low-paying jobs, for public assistance, prison, chronic health problems, mental health, and substance abuse problems. And then they have children, and the cycle starts all over again. We did a survey in 2010 of adults in Lake County, and it revealed that 82% of the respondents had experienced at least one of those 10 adverse childhood experiences. And that alone is concerning, but even more revealing is that 41% indicated they had experienced 5 or more adverse childhood experiences. So the cycle of generational childhood trauma has to be broken. And my priority is that our investment go in the youngest children because it's trickling down. And so my question is really about when I look at those boxes, what's being done. Some of them are obvious, right? Libraries are wonderful places for children. They build resilience and they bring resources. Law enforcement, some of these are obvious, maybe others aren't. So I guess my question is sort of how do we invest so that the money keeps trickling down, and a dollar that is spent doesn't become a dollar that goes away, a dollar that's spent becomes a dollar that's invested.
Thank you. Great question, and sometimes we lose sight of the fact of what's really important because we're bogged down with potholes and things like that that are important to us, but we forget about what our ultimate goal is here. And I can tell you from my life experience, and I see Supervisor Scott out here, and she can relate to this so well, just like I can. We both were on the school board prior to being on the board of supervisors because of our interest in our youth. I've been a foster parent for many years. She's still a foster parent, has been for dozens of kids. Because that's our commitment to our youth. The thing that we've worked on more recently, and I can't get into the exact details because I don't know all of them. There's so many different agencies that are working, and what we're trying to do is bring them all together so they're not duplicating efforts. I know that sounds crazy, but that's actually being done now. Seems like it should have been done. We work, Brock Falkenberg is here, our superintendent of schools. We work with him very closely, even though it's not a county government. We work with him really close on programs, and we all work with our schools. But more recently, the hospitals have engaged with us. And as a private enterprise, they have money available, and they understand the value of making sure the kids are healthy. The parents that break that cycle of opioid use, all those kinds of things, because it's driven by profit for them. They're genuinely interested in youth in our community, but it's driven by profit because the homeless and others are using their emergency room services. It's cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. And so they're seeing the value of investing those dollars into the community.
It's important that we look back at this law enforcement slide because it's that cycle that's feeding the left side of this court police department, and Brian can certainly speak to that.
So a lot of times law enforcement officers will tell you there's street level social workers with guns. A lot of what we do is going out there and doing that social work. If we can find a way to solve a problem or address a problem, particularly with a young person, that doesn't involve taking them to jail, taking mom and dad to jail, we'll do that when we can and when we have the resources available. But a lot of what we're talking about here is for years and years we've been doing more with less. We're at a point where now we're going to have to start doing less with less because we just don't have the resources to people. As Supervisor Brown said earlier, we're in the people business. We cannot deliver our services without people. If you look over there in that right column on that board, every number that you see is in red, is a reduction in the amount of people that are in that particular department. The Sheriff's Department up there, we have 66 allocated positions in the Deputy Sheriff Series. Of those 66, we have 9 to start funded. And we've continued to do that over the years and years in an effort to kind of save money for the budget. So we go with 9 of our positions that we don't receive funding during the annual budget. I currently I have an additional 9 positions that are unfilled. They're vacant positions that we have continuous hiring efforts trying to get people to come work here. Recruitment and retention for the sheriff's office and law enforcement in general in Lake County is difficult for a variety of reasons. You can travel right over the hill and make a whole lot more money in either Sonoma or Napa County, and we compete with those agencies. It seems like on a weekly basis for qualified employees. And I have another one that's already turning out. It's got a job offer to go work with one of the local police departments. So that's 19 positions out of 66. When you talk about these experiences and what this means to you on the street, what are some things that you're not going to get? And to lady here who's interested in the ACES experience, that might mean that a deputy's driving down the street and sees a child on the side of the road that, maybe everything doesn't look good, he stops, he says, hey, everything okay? The kid says, yeah, and the deputy drives on knowing very well that there's probably not something exactly right with that kid. But I gotta go to my next call because somebody got burglarized down here, or somebody's getting beat up at the other end of the street, or I gotta go take a coroner's report because somebody died across the road, and I just don't have time to do that because we're short-staffed. Right now, we have 5 deputies working the street for the entire county, and that's a typical night for us. Our average response times for normal priority calls over the last year are 30 minutes. So on average, when you call for a deputy sheriff in unincorporated Lake County, it's on average a 30-minute response time. And anybody that's called for one will absolutely attest to that. Our statistics show that, and that's just what we're dealing with. And what we're talking about here, folks, is this reduction is going to affect us all. And what we're here for is to reach out to you and ask you, what are you okay? What are you okay with maybe getting less of? What are you okay with cutting back on? Because the days of doing more with less I think we're seeing an end to it. As Jeff Ryan says, we're at the lowest levels for our reserves, and we're truly in a dire situation. And the purpose of this meeting is to reach out and get feedback from you. We work for you. So we want to know what our priorities should be, and we're here to hear that from you.
I got a question for Paul.
Let's just do one question per person.
Yeah.
We're gonna stick with one question per person to start with before we wrap this up. Thank you, Sheriff Martin and Carla. How long have you been the director of First Five? Just a year. We're very, very fortunate to have you. Thanks for your passion for the kids of our community. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, come on up. Thanks.
My name is Leah. I'm in Kelseyville, and I volunteer with 4-H. So I just wanted to put.
Go for it.
Yeah, I teach llama packing to kids. So I heard that I'm nervous.
Do you take grown-ups?
Yeah, well, it's for kids. But what I heard is that kids that go through 4-H, they're much more likely to succeed in college, to do well in science and math and stuff like that. So anyway, just wanted to quickly say that that's the UC Cooperative Extension. That's what runs that. Thank you.
I pledge my hands for greater service. I'm an all-4-H. Thank you, Leah. Thank you. All right. We'll work our way back. I'll get you next. Yeah.
I'm a former teacher. I can talk loud.
Way to go.
My name is Berna. I'm from Cobb, and I just have a question about the roads. Is Lake County going to get money from this new gas tax?
Yes. Could you repeat the question and then answer so that it can pick up from there? The question was, is Lake County going to receive money from the new gas tax? And the answer is yes, absolutely. This year, we budgeted $800,000 from the new SB1 revenues, and as they phase that in, we will see an increase in that revenue to approximately 2.5 million will be once all of the phases have been brought in.
Can it be used on any roads or?
Just District 5. Nice. So I have to go to the other 4 of these, and the answer will be just in District, whatever district we're in.
City roads, county roads?
No, county roads only, so not state highways and not city roads, not incorporated cities. And it has to be projects that we submit to the California Transportation Committee. They review them and approve them, and they have to be maintenance, pavement preservation. They have to be road maintenance type projects.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. All right, gentleman in the back. I'm still thinking about llamas.
I've got to waddle a little bit here.
Thank you. Can you share your name?
Yes, I will. My name is Tom Dixon, live in Clear Lake Riviera. Many of you up here. Since one of the main reasons we got ourselves into this budget deficit has to do with all of the devastating fires that have just went over this county for the last 3 years, I think one of the first things we have to ask ourselves is how do we stop that? Okay? And one of the things, I've seen a lot of money coming in here to fix up, people's lives that have been devastated, and we should certainly do that. But I don't think we're looking at being more proactive on those kinds of things. So I think what we have to really start doing is if we want to get away from this $5 million deficit, we have to stop if we can. Now, some of the conditions that come up are like hurricanes and fire, we can't do it. But we have to start doing something about that. So what I would like to see, I was looking at my thing, which one of the core services would you most want to see increased? And it turned out it's not a core, but it is code enforcement. We have properties all over the place that are overgrown, that are endangering all of our properties. And this is setting up the stage for another disaster. And what we need is a strong ordinance in this county that code enforcement can enforce and bring in revenue. Okay, that's one of the things we need. The other thing that we found out in Riviera is a substantial number of these properties that are terrible for our neighborhoods are in tax default. We're not doing anything. We're backlogged on all these tax defaults all over the county. So you want to help fix this situation, start dealing with these tax defaults properties. These people are endangering our lives, okay? And we need to go out and be proactive and come up with an enforceable fire prevention for all of our communities. That's just, and so any comments on that, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
So we can reimburse the states. We're trying to sell them on that idea. The county doesn't run a chipping program. It's just to give you an idea of, first of all, when the county does it, it means it's got to be prevailing wage, so it's going to cost 3 times more than if you guys do it, or more. And we just don't have the resources to do it. And it's just like everything else that we're talking about. We can do it, forget about the roads. We can do it, forget about law enforcement. So I mean, it's just like it's one or the other. So what we're trying to do is encourage people. And I said this at the Cobb area council last week. I was helping out doing some building inspections and doing little things in the book. And I was up on Cobb after they'd just gone through all this, and I was doing some inspections on re-roof and all that. And I could not believe how many people up there have pine needles on their roof that thick. And it's like you can't make people use common sense sometimes. It's just it's frustrating. And I totally agree with what Tom said. But to go out there and clean all the lots in Riviera, there's just no money. Even in the good years, we wouldn't have the money to do that. So we got to try to encourage people to do their own. Having an ordinance is great. If you can't enforce it, what's the point? So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at ways to enforce these things.
Rob, the tax default process, you might want to explain as well. It takes 5 years for a property to go to tax sale unless the law is changed.
Yeah.
So it's a lengthy process.
It is a lengthy process.
It's a lengthy process.
Yeah, but we have a lot of them that need to be done. And and Barbara we're going to impress upon her. She's an elected official. She doesn't answer to the board, but she does come to the board and do reports, and that's what she's doing tomorrow. And will give us an idea of what she's at. And to be honest with you, she's facing the same issue. She's short-staffed and trying. Everybody's got the same issues, but that is a priority. We have to have those sales done in order to have funding to do some of these other things. So it is a priority for us. What's that?
How much money did we bring in the last tax?
Yeah, she'll give that report tomorrow.
I have a gentleman in the back, and then the front here.
Am I a
That's
bat?
you. You're in the back.
I'm a bat.
You're the man.
Good time? Good morning, my name is Richard Black. Tom, I'm doing my best, but you're welcome to grab your chainsaw and come over and give me a hand. I can't afford to pay damages either if they're gonna code enforce me, honestly. There's only two ways I know of to reduce the woes of finances. You guys are asking us to do one of them, which is to reduce expenses. It's a hard thing to do. I don't feel good for you. The other thing is to increase your income. So if we have any assets, we need to sell so much stuff that our dogs and cats think are next. So I don't know if we have any extra assets, but is there anything that we can do to encourage businesses from out of town to come in and get employment and income taxes that way? I'll take my answer off there.
Richard, thank you. Great, that's a great question.
That was a great comment and a great question, thanks. We are selling stuff. In fact, we just sold 2 properties on the other side of the lake. We sold Holiday Harbor and the old visitor center in Lucerne. So, really pleased to have made those sales complete. And in a few weeks, or February anyway, there will be an RFP out for the Lucerne Hotel. And we're looking to sell or lease with an option to purchase, or long-term lease. So absolutely, we're looking to move some properties. And then about economic development. Economic development is absolutely, positively an enormous part of this equation. We have to draw business into our community, create jobs, generate sales tax revenues, etc. And our office envisions having a lot more discussions about the economic needs, economic development needs in Lake County. I think the board has been pretty in tune over the years with what the community doesn't want, but I've heard you say many times that we need to get clear on what our community does want in terms of economic development. So we can think now.
Great question. Dr. Smith. Sure. As Supervisor Brown suggested, if you want to just come line up here. I don't know.
My name is Richard Smith. And the biggest calamities that have happened to us since I've been in the county, of course, these fires, which are devastating. And in talking. Okay, is it ready to turn it on? It is? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. And the biggest calamity we've had is these fires. And in talking to the people who, particularly from the state level, they say it's not if we're going to have more fires, it's when we're going to have more fires. And so the preparation for that is important. But I would like to say to you, if you have not read it and you're tired of reading Stephen King novels, look at the work that has just been done by the Sheriff's Office in terms of looking at the kinds of disasters that could befall the county. It's terrible, and wildfires is just one part of it. But the budget allows us to hire a single person and a secretary to take care of the planning for that. Now, I can say right now that that one person and a secretary can't take care of all of these problems of mitigation of these dangers in the county. And we're looking at law enforcement not even being able to hire its people to just do basic law enforcement. I have a question, you know, and I know that there's no answer, but the question is for Sheriff Martin. What in the heck are you going to do about all of these problems if, in fact, you don't have the staff to do it? And my comment there is that we have a tendency to ask our governments to do things that we don't want to help do ourselves. And basically, the only satisfactory solution to this problem with all of these dangers in the county is for all of us to get to work and do it, because we're not going to get the county government to do it for us.
Yes.
I'll agree with you. There's not a good answer for that. If you took your car to the shop to get fixed, and there's no mechanics there to do it, the car's not going to get fixed. And as I said earlier, that's what we're talking about. We're in the business of delivering services, and my department is hovering around a 30% vacancy rate with deputy sheriffs. We have vacancies in other areas for safety dispatchers that aren't filled, so we have deputy sheriffs backfilling those. And the gentleman's exactly right, Mr. Smith, you're exactly right that there are things that don't get done. And these are some things that already aren't getting done. What we're talking about here is what else are we not going to be able to do? What are the services we're not going to be able to do? And we want input from you on what those priorities should be. Emergency services planning is definitely one of them. You're talking about the hazard mitigation plan meetings. That's a big book of the sky is falling, all the bad things that could possibly happen here. And yeah, we have an obligation to kind of prepare for that. But without the people, without the resources, it's not a possibility. So what we're at this meeting for is to hear your input, answer your questions. The desire earlier for increased code enforcement was out there. I'll second that. I think that's very important, right up there with law enforcement, because those quality of life issues, those abatement issues, all those things need to get done. But again, code enforcement is also dealing with these difficulties too, as far as not being able to attract and retain quality employees. So we need to talk about ways to reduce, what areas we're going to reduce, and offer up any suggestions. It's great to say, let's attract more businesses. We want to hear some suggestions from you as a community on what we can do to do that. What can we do as your government to attract more business to the community? What are some other ways that we can possibly generate revenue to make up for these $5 million shortfalls?
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and thank you, Sheriff Martin. And the thing that sold me on Lake County when we moved here 22 years ago is this is a can-do place, so thank you, Dr. Smith. If we can have anyone from District 5 up front, and if you're not from District 5, maybe rotate yourself to the back just to make sure we get all the District 5ers up here. Right.
I'm not from District 5, but I'm from Kelseyville. I got cut out of this. I'll let you know where I am.
I don't want to wrestle with you.
My friends and I live in Kelseyville, and I had a question. I don't understand why some of these county services are separated. It's very hard for me to understand why the sheriff's department is separated from probation, or why Parks and Recreation is separated from the libraries, especially when you have secretaries and people who work at each of those agencies. At the hospital, I wear 3 hats. Do you guys have that ability to share the hats?
So the law enforcement portion up there represents 51% of the budget, and that's not 51% going to the sheriff's office. That goes to all law enforcement services, including the public defender contract, including district attorney's office, including probation. While we do work together, the role of probation, they deal with people after they've been convicted. Our job is to investigate crimes before and make our case. There's really a conflict of interest that exists if you're the agency that's making recommendations, as the probation department does, to the court for somebody that's convicted of a crime that you also investigated. So it's necessary to have that separation there. They do their thing, we do ours. The probation department answers to the courts. The probation chief is an appointee of the judges. The other roles that the sheriff's office has, in addition to law enforcement, are providing boat patrol services, running the jail, running central dispatch, providing civil process services. There's a lot of duties of the sheriff that are outlined in requirements of the job that are in the law. We're required to serve civil process, required to provide court security, required to investigate crimes, but we're not required to actually go out and patrol. There's no statutory requirement for that. Traditionally, that's what we do. 57 and 58 sheriffs departments in California perform those services because it's the right thing to do and it's what people expect. But that's one of those things that there's no legal requirement for that. As far as separating the duties, no.
The sheriff's department and the district attorney's office and the probation are all separate. I get that. And I understand now that they have separate responsibilities. But there is no way that any of the other 10 or 7 entities here can share a secretary, can share office space, can share some other duty. I'm just looking at a way that you guys can continue to be and continue to serve. We all wear multiple hats. So there is, and you guys are looking at that.
I'd also like to say, you talked about secretaries, for instance. The library doesn't have any secretaries. I'm my own secretary, and some of the other secretaries, and some of the other departments that aren't listed here also provide services to all the departments. So the IT department, HR, the audit controller, they're the ones that do to help all departments and do kind of show that efficiency that you're talking about.
Thank you.
But there is some of that we're looking at, because we've got to look at consolidation.
Thanks, Kathleen. We'll find your district. Come on up, there you.
I'm not sure what district I'm in. Anyway, I'm Debbie James from Kelseyville, and my question is about the Valley Fire and the tax revenue. How many homes, 1,800 homes that were burned?
Valley Fire?
Valley Fire.
1278.
All disasters. And so how many homes have been rebuilt?
I looked at it this morning, it's about 140.
That are done. There's about 500 that are in different phases.
So is the slowness because of lack of people to go out and look and do the inspection?
No.
I mean, what's holding the building up?
So there's a lot of things to consider. It's not one reason. A lot of those homes up there were second homes, rentals, and bank-owned properties. Those three are probably not going to be rebuilt because of the cost of rebuilding. The other thing to factor in is there was a lot of people that just said, I was going to move anyway. Now's the time. Our kids moved to Iowa. I heard a lot of that go on. And there's a lot of people that are still, even 2.5 years later, are in such traumatic shock. They still don't know what they're going to do. They really don't. Now that we have another dilemma that's going up, as far as the inspections and all that, we're a day out, day or two. So it's really moved that along in their hiring process. So that's not the issue. The other issue that's come up since, well, it was bad enough with the Valley Fire, but then the Clayton Fire and the Sulphur Fire, now you throw in all the fires in surrounding counties, it went from about $150 a square foot before the Valley Fire to almost $350 to $400 a square foot now. And contractors, there's not enough contractors. So those are critical factors that we're dealing with right now. We have no control over them.
There's not enough contractors now.
Yeah, so,
I was wondering how much revenue contract was brought in before all this happened too.
it was immeasurable.
So what's going on with that?
Okay.
And I just want to say that I think tourism is going to make a lot of money for the county if we can somehow get that in.
Getting Kanaka open is a priority. We work really hard with Greg Bennett and the folks out there trying to find somebody to come in there. It's been in escrow 6 times, maybe 7. It's in escrow currently. But who knows if the sale's going to happen. We can't make somebody buy it, but so far, not one single prospective buyer has walked away from it and said, we just can't deal with the county. That's not been the reason. It's the cost of, it's the incredible, buying it is, we could probably put our money all together in this room and buy it. Bill Grudy's here, I know for sure we can. but the full for $100 million, so that's been the issue. But everything that we've heard from the folks that walked away said, they appreciate everything that the county's done. We've opened it up, we've given them information, we've gone out and walked with them, talked with them. We've done everything we can to try to impress upon them that we would expedite the permit process because we need that open. The whole county needs it open, but it hasn't happened yet. So. I think they opened escrow in May of this last year. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It's supposed to close. Escrow was supposed to be up a month ago. There's still some things they're working on, and so we're doing everything we can to help them. They sent us an email asking for some more information today, and we got back to them. I think I saw an email from Bob Massarelli that was probably 30 minutes after the email was sent. And we got it back to them. So we're doing everything we can to get the information to them.
Thanks, Debbie. Where'd you go? Great questions. You're fast. You're so hired.
I have an idea that might help. My name is Chuck Sturgis. I live out in Soda Bay. And I came here like Tom Nixon thinking one big priority for me, code enforcement. And I have to think when Rob Brown was saying about, well, all these people have 2 inches of
needles on their roof. You can't make it go up there, but I think we really underestimate sometimes the power of publicity and what it would be like if like every one of these people up in front here expressed their ideas. And look at Trump, the mileage he gets tweeting, and it's free. There's lots of publicity. You know, if Rob had, I don't know, a weekly article in the paper or something.
No, I was gonna use that, I'm using, you can be on my Twitter.
Rob, the county superintendent of schools, I can't get his last name. Falkenberg, yeah. And I hear him on the radio from time to time, expressing opinions and trying to influence people in terms of children, taking care of children, some kind of neat ideas. You know, why not? Everyone in here could, and or even just the public, if we expressed our feelings more to influence others for the things we want.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And telling your story is really a powerful way to get information across.
Brock Zoller from Kelseyville. I'm a legitimate District 5 resident. I have opinions on a lot of this, but I know we're supposed to restrict this to questions, and so I'll try to do that. My thought is looking at some of these core service things. Are they really things that the county should be providing that were perhaps provided in the past, either from private entities or families or volunteer groups? You know, and so have we made it easier for families and volunteer groups not to provide these services? And, for example, I'm a senior citizen. Families used to take care of their own senior citizens. I realize there's some people who have families and that doesn't necessarily apply, but then we get volunteer groups that somehow would do that. So I'm just asking them to think about that. The other thing specifically I had in mind was, I remember a few years ago when there was not quite enough money in the budget, it was suggested, it might have been your idea about the roads, and I've always been very proud of this. We have operated in the red as a county, and we were literally, not taking care of our roads the same way. We put a pavement over the top, I forget what it was called, and it wasn't expected to last as long, and it probably hasn't. I'm sure you all realize that, and I'm interested, how has that paid off for the county? Has that been a good idea? As I say, it's been a source of pride to me, because every time I go over a bump and I've got somebody from out of the county, I say, this is how we balance our budget in Lake County. It's a source of pride. I just wonder, has that worked out to dollars and cents? For example, I'm thinking of Gaddy Lane, where there was a top put over the top, rather than regrading and chip sealing. It hasn't lasted very long. I don't mind. I drive a little more carefully now, but has it paid off for the county?
Did you think it was a good idea?
At the time, I wasn't sure, but I'm all for living within our budget.
Okay, that was my idea.
Thank you, Dr. Zoller.
So, road maintenance becomes a balancing act. The newer the road, the easier it is to maintain it. And the older it gets and the more it deteriorates, the more expensive it is to fix it. I think what you're talking about is several years ago we did a large chip seal, countywide chip seal program. The Board of Supervisors in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, set aside $1 million for materials to be used on county roads. I took over as the Public Works Director in 2010, and we weren't prepared that first summer to do the project that the board had expected. And so we spent that summer preparing for the chip seal program. And I believe it was 2011 is what you're talking about. And we did Gaddy Lane and a number of other roads around the county with chip seal. Chip seal is a process that said, I mean, the name implies what it does, it seals the road. And it keeps moisture from getting into the pavement and saturating the subgrade. It's a good process. It can only be used on roads that are in pretty decent shape. And, but once moisture gets into the road and it saturates the subgrade, the continued traffic creates the potholes and the problems that you see. Was it worthwhile? I'm going to say absolutely. We chip sealed 30, 40 miles that year. Lars was a member of Public Works at the time. I want to say 30 or 40 miles of chip seal, which is a great program. We haven't chip sealed 30 or 40 miles of road since. And so I believe that we utilized the money that the board set aside to the best of our ability. None of it went to salary. It all went to materials that went onto the roads. And frankly, I'm pretty proud of that effort. I believe that the crews that work for the Public Works Department are skilled. We have the ability to do a number of very good things. And our limitation is funding and the ability to purchase materials. I'm hopeful. I got a question earlier. Are we seeing revenues from the SB1? And I'm hopeful to be able to see some of that increased revenue. I'm hopeful it doesn't get repealed.
Thank you, Scott. We're coming up towards the end of our question period. Is there anyone who has not asked a question yet who wants to get in line? I'm going to let you take cut since you haven't asked a question yet. Anyone else? All right. One more to wrap. All right, come on up.
My name is Trudy Navy, and actually, I'm from Kelseyville, but I too live in Soda Bay, so I know you're not my supervisor anymore, but I wanted to come here tonight, and I have a couple things. I don't know that I have any solutions for you. I spent many years in working for a big health organization, and I too went through many years of cuts and do all of that stuff, and it's horrible. It's a horrible place to be. So I have a couple of comments. I spend a lot of time at the library with Christopher. I'm a volunteer. It's my hours, and we have many volunteers. So one of my questions is, do you have volunteer opportunities in your department? Is that something, and I know with unions, I know there's issues that we can't take their job, and I understand that part of it, but are there reserve chair? Are there volunteers in other departments, things that we could do? That's my one question. My second question, and I just want to say this because I love the library, and I'm a little nervous. I love the library, and I want to support it. And the thing is, we are at such a minimal place in this county. It's almost to the point of being disgraceful compared to other counties. We have one librarian for 4 branches, no other librarians. We have library technicians, no other librarians. And the thing is, the equipment that we're working with are computers that other departments have given us. They're not new computers. And here in Lake County, if you have money, you can have a computer and you can have internet. If you are poor or lower, not poor, but in the lower part of the economy, you can't pay $90 a month for internet. And how do you apply for jobs? You don't walk in and apply for jobs anymore. You have to apply on the internet. You have to have a computer to do forms. You have to have computers to apply for scholarships. You have to have computers to apply for things. People don't have them. And every day that library opens and all 10 of our computers are busy immediately and for the rest of the day. So I just want to say I support the library 100%, whatever we can do for them. And the other part is the volunteers.
Thank you, Trudy. I know you were nervous, but I think you spoke to a lot of people there.
You know, I'm glad Trudy came up because she has been volunteering for years, and her husband as well. They put their money where their mouth is, and I really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. And I don't know, I don't even know what the count is of how many volunteers we have on these different various committees, but it's got to be hundreds. But one of the things that Carol and I just met about Friday is is this particular issue of having a person that's on county staff to manage volunteers and part-time employees and, different things like that, but also wanted to take it a step further and have that person work with all the departments on grant funding. Because I think grant funding has been, the departments are so busy doing their other jobs and trying to plug the holes in the dike that they don't have time to go out and plan and do these other things. And so that's one of the things that we're going to try to do is get somebody that can, manage the volunteers and make use of that. And Brock was talking about that earlier, about the seniors and the tremendous resource that we have available in seniors and to manage that. But Brock, to give you an idea of what the county's commitment is for the senior centers, I think Kelseyville's, we get $2,000 a year. So they are pretty self-sustaining and efficient there. So it's not a lot of money for the senior centers.
And to speak to volunteers at the Sheriff's Office, we have a volunteer program. We have volunteers that help us with our evidence transports. We use laboratories down in Sacramento and Santa Rosa, so we have a volunteer that transports material down there, so we don't have a paid employee doing that. We have volunteers that work in the office that enter data into the computer, so we don't have paid employees that are having to do that. And the question about reserve deputy sheriffs, the status of the law changed back in the 80s and early 90s. If somebody wanted to be a reserve, it was a fairly simple process. You could go take a few-week course, have the sheriff sign off on you, and that would be great. The status of the law is now that the requirements to be a reserve are essentially the same requirements as they are to be a full-time peace officer, which means somebody has to attend a complete full academy, which is, I think it's up in the neighborhood of 780 hours. It's about 6 months of full-time schooling to come to work for free.
Yeah.
Don't all rush, I'll have this application. So, yeah, it's a combination of, of the status of the law and the requirements. If somebody's going to put themselves through the academy, there's plenty of paying jobs out there, so we don't have any reserve officers right now. We're always seeking volunteers to come in and work and help us out with items, so if you're interested in volunteering with the Sheriff's Office, by all means stop by. If you're interested, I imagine there's probably not a department head up here that would turn away if volunteers willing to put in the hours. What I will say is that one of the difficulties and the frustrations with being a department head and having volunteers is having people fulfill those commitments, because it does take a lot of time to get somebody trained up. With the Sheriff's Office, we have to run a background check because we don't want anybody off the street coming in with access to all the sensitive information that we have. A lot of the other agencies have those same problems. So if you are interested in volunteering, make sure that you're willing to make that commitment and be there for the long haul.
Thank you. We are coming up on the end of our time together, so if you have, you guys haven't asked questions. Are you gonna let them? I'm gonna let them jump in front of you so that they don't ask questions. Okay.
One of the best ways I can see that the county probably save money is to stay out of the real estate. My question would be, recently sold Holiday Harbor at how much of a loss? We are literally needing
Can't hear you.
areas where we can redirect those funds.
Speak up, Joe.
Go ahead. Well, you can.
So his question was how much to stay out of the real estate business. And I've said all the time, we're the board of supervisors, not the board of realtors. We should not be in that business. And I'll make an exception for that, amount of contact. I'm glad we made that purchase. We make about $100,000 a year off of that. Is that more like about $250,000 a year we make off that. I'll buy property all day long for that. Yeah. But anyway, so that was good. That's probably the only exception that I can see. There's very, very few other, me personally, that I think that we should have purchased. And he's talking about the Holiday Harbor. I'm not going to shy away from the fact, well, first of all, it was a unanimous vote, let me put it that way. And it wasn't unanimous, it was a majority vote on that at the time to use redevelopment dollars, not county money, to buy that property. However, I think it was a bad idea. I thought it was a bad idea then. We sold it, we got rid of it, like Carol said, and I appreciate that. We got as much as we possibly could. We took a loss of about $1.25 million, $1.4 million on that. So there's been some mistakes made.
Not to the general fund.
Not to the general fund, yeah, not to the general fund. It's taxpayer dollars. Yep, that's all zero. So we've learned, hopefully we learn from those mistakes and we stay out of that business. We don't need to be buying more property. We need to peddle a few assets. That's not going to help us as far as our employees go, but it will help us in some regard to keep roads, other things that are one-time funding that maybe we can do. The lake, different things like that we can look at once we see what our priorities are. But Joe had a really good question. And there's no shying away from the fact that when times were good, I think we made some mistakes. We made some serious mistakes. We need to learn from those.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. You haven't asked a question yet.
I just want to know about the senior programs. What does that entail?
Don't need a microphone, do you?
No. Each year, the Board of Supervisors allocates a small amount of funds to each of the senior centers. Rob mentioned a minute ago that the Kelseyville Senior Center gets a $2,000 a year allocation. The other senior centers get varying amounts. The funding level was established long before I became county administrative officer, and I can only guess that it was based on the size of the programs in each community, if you recall. And then the other piece that is in the senior citizens program budget is that the board allocates money to the area agency on aging each year. The Lake County serves in a joint powers agreement for the area agency on aging, partnered up with Mendocino and Lake counties. So the area agency serves seniors that receive meals in the senior centers. They fund those meal programs. They provide a variety of other services, and so the board of supervisors contributes money to those services.
One more question?
Kathleen Deacon, I live in Kelseyville. My concern and my questions are about the rapid increase of vineyards going in, and the many concerns, any research into the environment beyond us, Napa and Sonoma County wineries, will present you with many of the issues that they're dealing with. And we're in a position to head those and to deal with them before they ruin our beautiful and compared to many other places, pristine county. So that's my concern, and I'm wondering, what things you have in place for the concerns of the environment.
Thank you. That's Kathleen, right? Thanks, Kathleen.
We mentioned earlier, I'm not sure when you got it, one of the first questions was that, about the videos. And what I talked about was the upcoming process for area plan updates, and to talk about the zoning. Right now, I got to be, I'm not going to sit here and carry water for the wine industry or anybody else, but there are private property rights. And there is the ability for people to put in vineyards where it's zoned appropriately. Water may be an issue, but they have the right to the water. And there's an argument out there that the water from the brush that's there now, there's more water used for that than there is for the vineyards that go in, transfer. So there's an argument that. So anyway, we're going to deal with that when it comes time to deal with zoning and the area plan. But for right now, nothing's going in that's not legal. So let's let businesses come in that are doing it right.
But what about businesses that, take the water from the neighbors? And
No, I got you.
Run
Yeah,
dry,
I
like
got
they
you.
did
And
up in
right. And
Wildcat.
Yeah, but if that happened, we'll,
It did happen.
okay.
Yeah, Pepsi put that
The
in.
bottom line is, we'll be dealing with that when it comes to the area plan updates. And it's
Yeah, but
about-
is that gonna be too late? We need to make some regulations that.
We're not gonna make it just,
that.
we're here to deal with, budget issues that are going on with the county, so that's a good discussion to have.
Yes.
Not this forum. So that's all I'm saying. We are gonna have that discussion, and it's not gonna be years down the line. We're gonna have this, this year, we're gonna be talking a lot about area plan updates. And that's another expensive venture, but we have to have it. We have to have it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for moderating that. We are at the end of our presentation for you tonight. We want to thank everybody for coming out on this rainy evening. Your ideas, suggestions, questions, help us shape the future of Lake County government. We feel we want the best possible services here in our community. Creating a financial and economic vision is really essential for us. Your input is truly a first step in that process. And I feel like I'm losing this, so the last thing I'll say is, before I hand the mic off to Rob, is on February 6th at 9:30 a.m., the Board of Supervisors will consider all of what has been heard in all 5 communication forums. We would invite you to join that discussion as well, Board of Supervisors, February 6th, 9:30 a.m. And if you're not able to attend in person, there's also always, you can live stream that or watch it on Channel 8.
All right, thank you. And I know you guys are ready to go. We're all ready to go. But one last thing, please, take down the email, send in the surveys that we asked for, and my phone number. If you guys want to get a hold of me, my cell phone number is 349-2628. Please feel free to call me anytime or any issue that relates to the subject or anything regarding the county or bail. We need bail. So anyway, thank you all for coming, and